Hello, my name is Miles Stump, and I'm going to be talking about native titles for my final presentation. Before we get started on native titles, I wanted to say a quick acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we live, work, and study. I pay respects to the ancestors and elders of all the nations at where it is located. I acknowledge the Cubby Cubby Gubby Cubby people of the Cubby Cubby Gubby Gubby nation that I am located on. The first thing we're going to talk about are a few key policies. The first one is the Maubo case, which ran between 1982 to 1992. For a little background, 4 Miriam men, Eddie Kirky Maubo, Reverend David Passy, Sam Passy, and James Rice, as well as 1 Miriam woman, Celicia Maupo Sale, fought against the state of Queensland in the High Courts, arguing that they had native title to the Moray Islands. The outcome was that the legal case recognized that the land rights of the Miriam people over the Moray Islands. It overturned the myth that Australia was terra nullius, which means land belonging to nobody, which was established during colonization and gave what the British thought was the right to colonize Australia. The High Courts of Australia recognized that Indigenous people have lived in Australia for thousands of years before colonization, and that it challenged existing Australian perspective that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people had no land ownership before colonization, and that the Crown had complete ownership over all lands in Australia. The next key policy is the Native Title Act of 1993. After the Maubo case, there was a lot of uncertainty about land rights, leading to the Native Title Act of 1993. The act sought to achieve 4 main objectives: to provide for the recognition and protection of native title, to establish ways in which future dealings effective native title may be preceded, and to set a standard for those dealings, to establish a mechanism for determining claims to native title, to provide for or permit the validation of past acts and intermediate period acts invalidated because of the existence of native title. And there were 2 types of native title established: non-exclusive, only provided certain rights such as living in or camping on country, lighting fires for personal use, and hunting and fishing. This one does not provide full access to country. You cannot tell people who can and cannot access the country, and you still can't perform a lot of the rituals that you might be able to if you had full access to country. The second type is exclusive, which provided the right to control who can access country. So this is complete access and the people who were given the native title can completely decide what happens on country. Some societal and governmental conditions during this time. So during colonization, Australia was declared terra nullius, as we discussed earlier. Because of this, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were not legally recognized as owners of country. Land was often stolen without treaties, and because of this, many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders were forcibly relocated onto missions and reserves and had their culture suppressed from them. This would later affect many Aboriginal communities' abilities to make native title claims, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Socially, there was a lot of widespread racism and marginalization. This also aided in the loss of culture and connection to country that many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders communities faced. And then there was a lot of social and economic suppression of Aboriginal people, leading to many falling into poverty. So, where does native title stand today? As of 2024, there were 695 positive determinations over 3,445,033 kilometers of country. However, acquiring them can be a large and taxing process. As we talked about earlier, during colonization and because of reserves and missions, a lot of people lost culture that you need, because in order to make a native title claim, you needed to present your cultural history, proof of protection and management on the land and country, and then proof of cultural value on the land. However, many of this was lost during colonization and the reserves and missions. even though we do know that people were living on this country long before colonization took place. However, there have been a lot of successful ones, and some that I would like to mention are the Cubby Cubby people's right to the Sunshine Coast area. This court case was started in 2013 and officially recognized in 2024. The Bachelors people's right to the island of Kagari. This was started in 2011 and recognized in 2014. And then the Noordar people's right to 200,000 square kilometers of country in the southwest region of Australia. You can see this mapped out on the right over here. And this was also the first time the capital city, Perth, was recognized by native title. This has been the largest and most successful native title claim to date, and it is a huge accomplishment. So my own personal reflection, while it is amazing to see that there are so many successful native title claims, many are shot down due to a lack of evidence, even though there is more than enough history to show that whoever does own the country today should not own the country due to colonization, and it should go back to the Aboriginal communities. I think it's unfair to say that there's a lack of evidence when we have the history to show that colonization destroyed their history and their culture. And while it's amazing to see so many successful native title claims, I hope that going forward we see many more. And we also know that there's a lot of racism against Indigenous and Aboriginal communities still very prevalent in Australian culture. This is unfortunate because it's very similar to what I see back home in the United States. And when I didn't know about this when I was coming to Australia, but it was very disheartening to see it. Because as an environmental science major, conservation is a huge part of that. And one of the biggest things I've learned here and back home is the importance of including Indigenous knowledge in conservation. A lot of the times, pretty much all the time actually, Aboriginal and Indigenous knowledge is so deep and full for that country, and they know what's best more than any scientists who are coming in and claiming that they know what's happening. So it's very disheartening to see that even today, when we know that there's so much knowledge that can be used to protect land, that it's not being used because of racism that is still prevalent in society today. And then I just wanted to do a little reflection on my own positionality. Today I often find myself in a very odd spot when it comes to my own positionality, as I'm not currently living in a place where I call home, and I don't get to see my loved ones basically at all. I only get to see them on the phone every couple days. However, this time in my life has been very important for my education, learning, and growing, my connection to both the natural world as well as what I want to do as a professional, and building connection to people and understanding and learning more about Indigenous knowledge and how important that is. So it's changed my perspective on the way that I have seen and approach conservation and discussing conservation, and how I plan on pursuing my goals in the future. And I look forward to continuing to learn and grow as a person as I approach the end of my degree and start looking for a job in conservation. And then here are my reference list, and I just wanted to say thank you for a great semester. I've learned so much that I would not have been able to learn without the amazing effort that you guys put into teaching. So thank you guys.